Chair notes the presence of a quorum. Pursuant to committee rules, members of the committee may submit written opening statements for the record. I ask that members may revise and extend the remarks on the bills to be considered at this markup and have those remarks included in the record. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare recess of the committee at any time. Pursuant to Committee Rule 3I, the chair announces that I may postpone further proceedings today on the question of approving any measure or matter or adopting an amendment on which a recorded vote is ordered. I now recognize myself for an opening statement. Again, good morning, and thank you for joining us today for this full committee markup. If you've been around our committee for any length of time, you'll know this room is often filled with rigorous debate and fierce opinions from both sides of the aisle. Today, we have an opportunity to advance 3 bipartisan bills under unanimous consent. We'll get to each individual bill in a bit, but I first wanted to take some time to reflect on some of the accomplishments that our committee has had so far in 2024. One of the biggest accomplishments is the Bipartisan Explore Act, which passed the House a few weeks ago and which I hope will be signed into law this year. It's the first outdoor recreation bill of its kind ever passed by the House, and the overwhelming support from outdoor enthusiasts, various stakeholder groups, hunters and anglers, members of Congress, local communities, and more show just how significant this bill is. I've been fortunate to travel to all 50 states and all of the territories, and I've been able to visit many of our national parks and public lands. I genuinely believe that America has the most spectacular natural resources in the world. By advancing this common sense legislation, we are making the outdoors more accessible for everyone and ensuring our public lands are kept open and beautiful for generations to come. We also worked closely with Ranking Member Grijalva and members from both sides of the committee to stand up the Indo-Pacific Task Force, which worked to advance the Bipartisan Compact to Free Association Amendments Act. This critical legislation demonstrates America's commitment to our allies in the Indo-Pacific region. The issue becomes more important by the day as the Chinese Communist Party aggressively attempts to expand its malign influence. Thanks to the broad bipartisan support and the work of the members of this committee, the bill was signed into law in March. During each markup we've held this year, we've advanced bills addressing important local issues facing communities nationwide. Some of the Inside the Beltway reporters may view these bills as not being newsworthy, but that couldn't be further from the truth. I've gotten a personal experience several years ago. I had to work through this committee to facilitate a simple land transfer between the Forest Service and a local church, something that should have been a simple process, but which literally required an act of Congress. That's a story that no DC journalist spilled any ink on, but back home, it was a big deal. I think that's one of the things that makes this committee so unique and important. We're discussing and debating the issues impacting rural America and the lives and livelihoods of millions of hardworking Americans. When you live, own, or near federal lands and depend on them for sustenance, business, and more, things like land transfers, agency regulations, and land use designations can mean the difference between making your mortgage payment or not. This Congress, we have advanced solutions to ease regulatory burdens, cut red tape, reauthorize local projects, and more. I'm proud to do that again today by advancing this slate of bills, utilizing local feedback to advance sound policy here in D.C. With that, I yield back, and I will now recognize the ranking member for any opening statement he may have.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I do want to thank you for your willingness to work with us toward bipartisan forestry management legislation that can find support across both parties and hopefully be signed into law rather than moving forward today with a bill that was not ready and would require extensive debate and amendments. With your cooperation, I'm hopeful that we can work out a bill that the committee will approve with bipartisan support, and it can then pass the House on suspension. So fingers crossed, and I hope we continue that collaboration. While that work continues, I'm pleased to support the package of bills before us, moving on unanimous consent. These are smart, common sense policies that safeguard a unique undersea environment and a historic urban site, also restore democratic power to thousands of American citizens. I want to thank the bill sponsors and all the members who've worked hard to bring these bills to our committee today. The first bill in the package, the Alabama Underwater Forest National Marine Sanctuary and Protection Act by Mr. Carl will safeguard a one-of-a-kind ancient treasure, a forest of cypress trees more than 50,000 years old. That's older than most United States senators, as we noted at the committee. Preserved underwater in the Gulf of Mexico. Mr. Carl, you've done a great job on this. The witness that you brought before us was just so compelling and passionate. I really enjoyed that, and congratulations on the progress of your bill. H.R. 6062 from our colleague Representative Radewagen will restore democratic power to American Samoa by allowing the changes to the territorial constitution to be made by the people themselves, not by the United States Congress. The change has been a long time coming, and I'm glad we're acting on it now. Congratulations, Ms. Radewagen. And then the final bill up today, the Holcomb-Rucker Park Landmark Act, will commemorate the mecca of basketball. At this time of year, with the playoffs, it's appropriate, I think, that we advance this bill. This is a historic park in Harlem that played an iconic role in the development of the sport of basketball, and I want to thank Subcommittee Ranking Member Neguse for his work to amend it so that it can move forward today. That's it, Mr. Chair. Thank you for working with us on these priorities, and to our colleagues on both sides of the aisle for their leadership on these bills. And with that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. We now turn to the UC package. With the cooperation of Ranking Member Grijalva and the other members of the committee, it appears we have worked out an agreement on 3 bills scheduled for markup today. As we have done before, rather than going through a formal markup process for each of the bills, I will make a single unanimous consent motion to report out the bills favorably with any amendments that have been filed and agreed to. But before we begin, does any member seek time to speak on any of the bills in this unanimous consent motion? Ms. Radewagen, you're recognized.
Talofa. And thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to thank my colleagues for supporting the passage of H.R. 6062 through unanimous consent. Thank you, Chairman Westerman and Chair Hageman, for their leadership, and thank you to Ranking Member Grijalva and Representative Sablan for making this a bipartisan effort. At the hearing conducted on January 18th by the chair and ranking member of our subcommittee with oversight on insular affairs, the American Samoa government established a strong record supporting passage of this bill by the House, and the Senate Committee of Jurisdiction is aware of the progress we're making. I want to reiterate that this repeal does not limit Congress's powers in any way. We still have plenary oversight over the territories, and I thank my colleagues for recognizing that. Rather, this legislation is a strong step forward for territorial and indigenous self-determination. I look forward to continuing work with all of you on issues affecting American Samoa and the other U.S. territories. Soifua ma'iamanuia. Thank you.
Gentlelady yields back. Does anybody else wish to be recognized? Mr. Carl, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to the bipartisan ranking member. Mr. Huffman, you have really gone above and beyond helping me on this bill, and I appreciate that. That just shows what we can do when we try to work together. I'm incredibly proud to have this Alabama Underwater Forestry National Marine Sanctuary and Protection Act here to mark up. It is simply put, it's 8 pages, and simply put, it protects something 30 to 50 million years old. But at the same time, we still get to enjoy it. We still get to dive on it. We still get to fish it. But what we will stop is any commercial ideas that we may have to actually bring those trees up and use them for commercial purposes. So thank you to the committee. Thank you, Chairman Westerman, for your help on this, and I appreciate it. Return my time.
Gentleman yields back. Anybody else wish to be recognized? I'm pleased to advance 3 bipartisan bills today by unanimous consent. The first, as Mr. Carl just talked about, is H.R. 897, the Alabama Underwater Forest National Marine Sanctuary and Protection Act, introduced by Representative Jerry Carl of Alabama. I tried to get Representative Carl to take me scuba diving to see this, and even though he failed to do that, we still decided to put his bill on the markup. But this is an amazing find where these very, very old cypress trees off the coast of Gulf Shores, Alabama, have been there It's approximately 70,000 years old, and it's a source of ongoing scientific research and has been internationally recognized. Properly conserving this forest is critical to supporting the ongoing scientific research and recreational opportunities the site provides. The bill also includes important exceptions to allow for law enforcement activity, commercial and recreational fishing, and energy production permitted or authorized before the bill's enactment to occur inside the sanctuary. H.R. 897 strikes an appropriate balance showing that facilitating critical economic activity and conserving treasured natural resources are not mutually exclusive. I again want to thank Mr. Carl for his leadership on this important legislation. Next is H.R. 6062, legislation sponsored by Representative Radewagen that would return the process for amending the Constitution of American Samoa to its pre-1983 status quo. Under this bill, Congress retains its oversight authority under the territorial clause of the U.S. Constitution. Our fellow Americans in American Samoa deserve to be able to amend their Constitution without unnecessary federal bureaucracy. H.R. 6062 would further champion this committee's support for self-determination in the U.S. territories. It is fair and equitable to allow American Samoa to have a constitutional amendment process similar to the other U.S. territories. Congress will continue to oversee the Department of Interior to prevent unfair and unilateral decisions against the territories by the department. I thank Representative Radewagen for her work in this bill, and I'm proud to advance it today by unanimous consent. Finally, we have H.R. 6852, the Holcomb-Rucker Park Landmark Act, a bipartisan bill being co-led by Representative Espialot and Moylan. This legislation celebrates the storied history of Holcomb-Rucker Park by recognizing the park as a national commemorative site. Rucker Park is a premier destination for basketball enthusiasts in the Harlem neighborhood of New York City, from serving as an outlet for young people in the local community to hosting legendary NBA players. Rucker Park has exemplified the power of sport to unite a wide range of people while promoting exercise and recreation. This bill would not add to the federal estate and includes private property protections. I want to thank Representative Espialot and Moreland for their bipartisan work on this legislation. I urge the adoption of this unanimous consent package, and I yield back. Now I ask unanimous consent on the federal lands be discharged from further consideration of H.R. 6852, Holcomb-Rucker Park Landmark Act, without objection. So ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries be discharged from further consideration of H.R. 897, Alabama Underwater Forest National Marine Sanctuary and Protection Act, without objection. So ordered. I ask unanimous consent that the Subcommittee on Indian and Insular Affairs be discharged from further consideration of H.R. 6062, a bill sponsored by Representative Radewagen relating to the process for amending the Constitution of American Samoa. Without objection, so ordered. I now ask unanimous consent that the following measures be approved and favorably reported as described to the House of Representatives: H.R. 897, Alabama Underwater Forest National Marine Sanctuary and Protection Act, with an amendment offered by myself, designated Westerman number 1. H.R. 6062, a bill sponsored by Representative Radewagen relating to the process for amending the Constitution of American Samoa, and H.R. 6852, Holcomb-Rucker Park Landmark Act, with an amendment in the nature of a substitute offered by the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Neguse, designated Neguse 234 A&S. Without objection, so ordered. Without objection, the motions to reconsider are laid upon the table. Do you have an announcement?
I do, Mr. Chairman. I give notice of my intention to file supplemental additional dissenting or minority views on the measures just considered. I ask unanimous consent that this notice be extended to all measures considered at this markup under House Rule 11, Clause 2L. This notice extends to all members.
Without objection, so ordered. Ask unanimous consent that the staff be allowed to make any technical and conforming changes to the documents the committee just adopted, subject to approval of the minority. Without objection, so ordered. If there is no further business, the committee stands adjourned.